What's going on, everybody? Welcome on into On Air with Chris Shanafield. It's been a while since we've last done this, and it's a pleasure to do this with my best friend who knows a thing or two about football, Travis Harris. Travis, we appreciate you hopping on here this afternoon, man.
Thanks for having me. It's been a while.
It has been a while. Usually it's a three-man crew, three-man pod, you, me, and your brother. This time it's just you and me, and obviously the football season is coming to an end. We have Super Bowl 56 taking place next week, 7 days away, almost 7 days exactly. So we're really getting there. It's an interesting matchup, one that I don't think anybody's seen coming. The Los Angeles Rams, all right, that was predictable, taking on the Cincinnati Bengals. That one, I'm not sure anybody was able to predict, 16 weeks ago. But before we get into that, Travis, because you have been on this podcast before, but it's been a while. I just kind of want to introduce yourself to the audience out there that may not be too familiar with you. Obviously, you're from Illinois, grew up here in Richmond Park with me, and went to Rich Central, unfortunately, but from there you went to the University of Missouri and then grad school at St. Cloud State, which is where you reside now, St. Cloud, Minnesota. Just for those out there that aren't too familiar, can you just talk about that journey? Because one thing that I do, as you know, is interview college prospects getting ready for the pros. And you went to two, pretty big-time colleges. Obviously, the University of Missouri, big-time FBS program when talking about sports-wise. And then you also went to St. Cloud and had a lot of success there. Can you just talk about and I don't know if I really even ever asked you this, and obviously we'll get to the football in just a minute, but coming out of high school, how did you make that decision to go to Missouri? What were some of your other options? And again, how did you end up going there? Talk about your experience there, and then ultimately landing at St. Cloud State as well.
Okay. So going to Rich Central, home of the Olympians, the better school of the other rival schools, namely the school that you went to, Richie's Rockets. No, but our high school had this opportunity to apply to up to three colleges, and then they would cover those fees for us. So with that being said, I chose three schools. I chose University of Missouri, Columbia. I chose Michigan State University, and I chose Washington University in St. Louis. So I chose those schools because they were close enough to Illinois, in which I can go to, but also further enough that basically I won't have to feel like I had to come back home so readily. So I just chose those three schools, and I didn't really apply to any others. I also just wanted to have a time to explore what else is outside of Illinois. So out of those three schools, University of Missouri was the only school that I got accepted to out of the three. So I decided to go there, and I can't say I can say that I'm very glad that I did.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I didn't visit you as often as I wish I did, especially now looking back. But the couple of times that I did visit you in Missouri, they were absolutely awesome. Now you're obviously in Minnesota. You're in enemy territory, as the Bears fandom in us would like to say. Minnesota, how's life in the Twin Cities, my friend?
So life in Minnesota is a very complicated thing. Especially when the Vikings aren't doing well, you can definitely feel the energy of Vikings fans out here. And it's interesting because there's a rivalry going on, obviously, with the Packers and the Bears. So depending on the Minnesota Viking fan that you talk to, they are more of a fan. They respect the Bears more than the Packers and vice versa. So it is a very interesting dynamic.
Absolutely, and I think it's kind of funny that, both these teams, the Bears and the Vikings, as I situate my computer here really quick, they're looking for new head coaches. They're looking for new general managers, or they were looking for new general managers this offseason. Obviously, the Bears, it sounds like the Bears stole Ryan Poles away from the Minnesota Vikings, didn't let him get on that plane to Minnesota after the second interview, and it almost seemed like the Vikings had to settle with their candidate. Obviously, with that said, his name slips my mind, but certainly a candidate worthy of hiring. And the Minnesota Vikings ended up hiring, coming from Cleveland, has past roots in San Francisco as well. But anyways, before we get more into that discussion about the new Bears GM Ryan Poles and their new head coach Matt Eberflus, let's take a look at the Super Bowl matchup that we have that I mentioned in the opening, Travis, and that's Super Bowl 56, the Cincinnati Bengals taking on the LA Rams. Back-to-back years we have a team represented in their home stadium in the Super Bowl, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers a year ago, who ultimately defeated the Kansas City Chiefs. Now we have it again with the Rams playing at SoFi Stadium, and they're going to be taking on the Cincinnati Bengals. I mean, talk about a Cinderella story that the Cincinnati Bengals are. I mean, certainly this season it's been a different vibe from them. I mean, they won their division. Their offense is tops of the NFL, and obviously that Joe Burrow to Jamar Chase duo, which a lot of people thought maybe Jamar Chase would be a bust based off of his preseason performances. That's obviously out the window. You could certainly make a strong argument that he's the rookie of the year. I would say he's the rookie of the year. It is a quarterback league, though, so it wouldn't totally shock me if Mac Jones wins that award, but I think Jamar Chase is the favorite to win that award. I mean, what excites you the most, though, about this matchup, Bengals-Rams, that we're going to get a week from today?
The most exciting part about this is to see – there's two things, actually. One, to see if Joe Cool Burrow can manage the intense pressure that the Los Angeles Rams will bring. Spending high money on Von Miller, have Jalen Ramsey on the opposite side of that, Leonard Floyd, and, of course, how can one forget about Aaron Donald? So they are literally built to win now and built to bring the pressure. And it's no secret that the Bengals offensive line have had their collective share of struggles. But Joe Cool Burrow still finds a way to win, and talk about a Cinderella story. So that's one important matchup to watch. But the other exciting matchup would be who can stop Jamar Chase? Can they slow him down? Even someone perennially like Jalen Ramsey had his struggles with Jamar Chase before. So it'll be interesting to see how the showdown goes.
Yeah, definitely. And when I look at this matchup, it's like Cincinnati, it almost seems like there shouldn't be any pressure on the Cincinnati Bengals. No one's seen them making it this far. So go out there, do what they've done the past month, and we'll see how things go. But on the other end, the Los Angeles Rams, you got kind of the homegrown team in the Cincinnati Bengals. A lot of it has been through the draft. They did make some free agent splashes, though, especially on their defensive line this offseason, bringing over Trey Hendrickson, bringing over DJ Reader. And I think those guys have been fantastic. I think Mike Hilton has been one of the most underrated signings. When looking back, he's been fantastic at the nickelback position for the Cincinnati Bengals. It looks like you want to say something there?
Mike Hilton or Eli Apple?
Oh, man. I'm talking about Mike Hilton. Eli Apple on the other end, though. I mean, he's got a lot of words to say, but doesn't seem to back it up very well. So we'll see how this matchup against those elite Rams wide receivers, Cooper Kupp and Odell Beckham Jr., we'll see how that treats them. But you kind of have the homegrown team in the Cincinnati Bengals taking on this team in the Rams, who they've mortgaged a lot of their future draft picks, etc., on these players such as a Matthew Stafford. They bring in Von Miller mid-season. They were able to bring in Odell Beckham mid-season after the Browns were released him. It seems like that's a team that all the pressure is on. They were expected to make a run this season. Jared Goff brought this team to a Super Bowl. Matthew Stafford was brought to the Rams to win the Super Bowl. So I think if you're looking at and talking about which team the pressure is on for, I think it's the Rams and the Bengals. I think they really have nothing to lose heading into this game.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And it was expected for them to be there, as you said, but the reality is that they almost weren't here. Fast forward to before, rewinding back to before, they were one play away from being kicked out of the postseason by their nemesis, the 49ers. And quite a story that would have been. It really makes you wonder about the legacy of Sean McVay. If they would have lost that game, how that would have turned out for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to give a quick shout out to Bearlissimo, big time Bears fan. Tape never lies network, and obviously a great supporter of the podcast, tuning in here, giving his thoughts on this game as well as other topics that we've touched on. But yeah, I mean, Barlissimo, a friend of the program from across the pond in England, so definitely appreciate you tuning in, man. All right, let's give our predictions on this game, Travis. I mean, it's hard for me to not choose the Cincinnati Bengals. I feel like this, when looking at the Bengals this season, Travis, it feels like one of those NCAA basketball teams in the tournament that caught heat at the exact right time. And again, that's kind of what it feels like with the Cincinnati Bengals. Not many thought that they would defeat the Raiders in the first round, in the wild card round. That wasn't a huge surprise, though. You could kind of see that one going either way. The following week, though, they take on the number one team in the AFC, and that would be the Tennessee Titans. And they
brought
really
9 sacks. They sacked them 9 times and still found a way to win.
Exactly. And obviously their defense showed up big, intercepted Ryan Tannehill 3 times in that game. And I think that's the most impressive part, though, Travis, is that Joe Burrow got his ass kicked that game. But time and time again, he got up and continued to make plays even after that 9th sack of the game. I mean, I think there's less than a 1% chance that a quarterback goes on to win a football game in which he's sacked 9 times. And Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals were able to do that against the number 1 seed in the AFC, in the Tennessee Titans. And then the following week, AFC championship game, you're playing at Arrowhead Stadium, one of the toughest environments to play at. And, let's not forget that this is Joe Burrow's first time in the playoffs. This is, they've already achieved so much more than anybody really expected. They got their first playoff victory in 31 years. And here they are now playing the AFC championship game, and they go down big. They're down 18 at halftime. They come back in the second half, and I think they probably forced Patrick Mahomes to play the worst half of football that I've ever seen him play, and they go into overtime. They lose the coin toss. They force an interception off a tipped pass, and Joe Burrow leads them down the field, and their kicker, rookie kicker, 5th-round pick out of Florida, Evan McPherson, he kicks their way into the Super Bowl to now take on the Los Angeles Rams. And it's really, like I was saying in the beginning, though, it feels like the Cincinnati Bengals are that team in the NCAA tournament. They're the Loyola Chicago from a few years ago, the late seed, 9th, 10th seed that makes this run. And here they are now in the championship game. And it feels like that this is their time. But with that said, I'm going to be one of those guys that, despite saying all of that, I'm going to be one of those guys that doubts them this game. Not so much me doubting them. It's me having more faith in the Los Angeles Rams, and really at every facet, from coaching to their offense, which is probably what the Cincinnati Bengals would challenge the Rams team in general the most in. And then obviously the Rams defense, you mentioned it, Aaron Donald, he's been the best player on the defense side of the football probably since he's arrived in the NFL. I don't think that's a bold statement to say. You got Jalen Ramsey, you got all these guys that they're invested in and they brought in for this very reason. So I'm going to go with the Rams in this game. Right now, it's a 4-point line. The Rams are 4-point favorites. I could see the Rams winning this game by a touchdown. I don't think it will be a blowout. If anything, from what we just seen last week out of this Bengals team, is that they got a lot of fight. They got a lot of fight in them. And, they're not just showing up to this moment just to say, hey, we were there. I think this is going to be the start of something special in Cincinnati, but I do not think they get the job done a week from today at SoFi Stadium.
Okay. I think the world wants the Cincinnati Bengals to win, given everything they've been through to get to this point. But I'm going to challenge the narrative that the Bengals are really like this underdog team. And I'm going to stop disrespecting the Bengals, because every time the Bengals are put up in these matchups, like KC, like the Titans, they were always put as the underdog, the team that wasn't going to win. So I'm going to challenge the narrative, and I'm going to say, if they were able to go to toe-to-toe with Patrick Mahomes twice this year and beat them in that fashion and beat the number one seed in the AFC, the Tennessee Titans, after succumbing to 9 sacks, and the Raiders, the Raiders are hot and cold, so they can be a formidable team too. So after everything they've been through all year, I would say that the Rams don't scare them, nor do anyone else.
Yeah, and Barlissimo, he brings up a great point. As you just said, Bengals getting past Kansas City, they have nothing to fear with the Los
Yes,
Angeles Rams. And that's a good point. That is a good point. They not only
twice.
put a beating on them earlier in the regular season, towards the tail end of the regular season, but they did it again at Arrowhead in the AFC Championship game. And, I've been a guy that has, given Zach Taylor, the head coach of the Bengals, a lot of shit.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and
Same.
I'll say it. I mean, hats off to him. I mean, the job that he and that team in general has done this year, doing what they've been able to do, making it this far. My hats off to Zach Taylor. Great job, and really has made me shut up in the criticism that I've given him over the last couple of years. I thought he should have been gone after year one, and obviously that's why I'm not a GM. But all right, so you're taking the Bengals. And you're absolutely right. I think America is rooting for the Cincinnati Bengals. I'm rooting for the Cincinnati Bengals.
Mm-hmm.
With that
I
said, though, I won't be terribly upset if the Rams win, because I do think Stafford deserves it. I do think Aaron Donald deserves it. I do
mm-hmm.
think, well, Von Miller already has one in Denver, but hard to root against him.
Yeah.
So, I mean, a part of me wouldn't be upset if the Rams win it, but you're absolutely right. I think America, myself included, is rooting for the Cincinnati Bengals.
And I would also add to that as well. If you look at the 49ers, their offensive weaponry, besides Debo Do-It-All Samuels, he is an ultimate weapon. Outside of him and George Kittle, who can have his hot and cold moments, the 49ers have Elijah Mitchell at running back. But other than that, they don't really have much of anyone that really scares people. I mean, Brandon Ayuk can come along at times, but he's so inconsistent that it's hard. But you take the Bengals, who have Jamar Chase in and of itself. You have T. Higgins. You have Joe Mixon, who was a Pro Bowler this year, led the league third in rushing. And you have that defense. I think they have more weaponry to be able to go toe to toe with the Rams.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And Barlissimo, absolutely right. SoFi Stadium isn't home field advantage. No, it is not. And we've seen that time and time again this season. We've seen it last week with the San Francisco 49ers and their fan base evading that stadium. And the fact that Cincinnati, it's been so long that they won a damn playoff game, let alone make it to the Super Bowl. I totally expect the Cincinnati fans to be out there big time, and probably, well, no doubt, I think they'll overcome the Rams fans that are there. And he also adds that only Von Miller on the Rams knew that there was a game left, the way that the Rams reacted after their win last week against the San Francisco 49ers. While I agree, I will say the same thing about the Cincinnati Bengals. I mean, you look on social media, you would have thought that they won the damn Super Bowl last week, which I get it. Big victory against the Kansas City Chiefs at their home stadium. But, you had guys, and I get the celebration part, but yeah, there is still one more game to go, and it's the biggest game of all. And that's Super Bowl 56. It'll be at SoFi Stadium, Cincinnati Bengals and the Los Angeles Rams. Moving on, Travis, we both grew up in Illinois. I'm still here. Again, you're in Minnesota. We're Bears fans. It's been rough.
Preach.
We watched the draft, of course, together, and that was a very big moment when the Bears traded up and drafted Justin Fields, number 11 overall. Fast forward now, they're without the general manager that made that trade and that pick. They're without that head coach that, I feel like had a really big voice and a really big reason as to why they drafted Justin Fields. Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy are no longer here. Ryan and Matt 2.0, though, Ryan Poles and Matt Eberflus. Poles coming over from the Kansas City Chiefs. Matt Eberflus, former defensive coordinator the past 4 years with the Indianapolis Colts. What do these hirings do for you? I know some were pretty upset. I think this is exactly what the organization needs. And we'll talk a little bit about what was said in their press conference and whatnot, a couple of weeks ago. But I think this is what the organization needs. They need these two guys, and I think that, yeah, it's a defensive mind. Yeah, you want to build around Justin Fields and you want to get the most out of him. And I still think that's in reach with Matt Eberflus and the staff that he's building here.
Mhm. Yeah, I think everyone in Chicago was very excited when we got Ryan Poles. It didn't take us long to kind of warm up to the guy, especially considering his diverse background in Kansas City, a part of a winning culture, also being highly coveted and being a finalist for multiple jobs. And also hearing, I guess, that Minnesota was on the table, but he forego going to Minnesota because he wanted to be here in Chicago. A lot of reasons for Bears fans to kind of be enamored by this hire. So that part was good for us. But I think just getting Matt Eberflus, it wasn't a splashy pick. And I think that we as Bears fans are accustomed to uh, things not going so well for so long, not having the right coach, not having the right quarterback. And now that we do, we have such high expectations for our team. So it wasn't a splashy pick. It wasn't an offensive minded coach, which we all wanted for Justin Fields' sake. But I think after thinking about it some more, we got used to the idea of having a coach who is defensive minded because he can help Justin Fields identify defensive concepts. And we also like the way that he manages the team so far, at least what he says about attacking and hustling and being a force on the team.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And I know the press conference. A lot of people are giving them some shit, both Poles and Eberflus. A lot of people are saying, Poles didn't really seem like he was, a lot of people thought that maybe he was nervous speaking in front of the Chicago media for the first time and didn't really know what to say at times. I think that it both, I like the fact that neither of them said any of the cute BS that we've been used to the last few years. The one or two times a year that we'll see or hear from Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy. We all know the words and the terms that he would use. And Eberflus even said, we got to figure out the whys or something along those lines. And it did make me cringe a little bit, but the way he kind of explained it and how he's going to try and find some of these answers was a way that I didn't hear Matt Nagy in the past. And I think you're right. I mean, we've seen the success that Lovie Smith had here at times, obviously. Now, that was more so just the defense side of the ball. We know the issues that he had on the offense side of the ball and trying to find the right offensive coordinator, especially once we got Jay Cutler here. Luke Getsy. Luke Getsy is the guy that Matt Eberflus decides to bring in. He poaches him from the Green Bay Packers. You hear stories about how close he is with Aaron Rodgers, with Devontae Adams. And the major question, though, is how much of the success that we've seen from the Packers offense, how much was that due to Luke Getsy and, what he brings in as a coach, as opposed to how much was it Matt LaFleur, an offensive mind, their head coach? How much of it was Aaron Rodgers, top two, top three, maybe even the number one quarterback in the NFL, probably the MVP this season? How much of it was him and what he wanted to do? When you heard the news that they're bringing in Luke Getsy, who will now be a first-time offensive coordinator, what was your initial reaction? Me personally, really quick, I like the fact that we're getting, we're stealing somebody from the Packers organization who their quarterback thinks so highly of, who their star wide receiver, who's set to be a free agent this offseason, thinks so highly of. If there's any type of friction there, now I don't want that to be the only reason why they made the hire. I need this guy to pan out. I need him to be a damn good coach. And I need him to bring Justin Fields to stardom like we know he could be. But if we could create any more dysfunction in Green Bay, I'm all for it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. My initial reaction when we hired him as a coordinator, my thought was like, who is this guy? Has he have any experience at all being an OC anywhere? I just wanted to kind of just watch some tape and kind of see how he was doing with other teams. But like you said, it's hard to kind of separate yourself from is the success of a quarterback like Aaron Rodgers due to this guy, or how much so, or is it because of Rodgers? I think that's some of the same questions that in Denver they will get from Nathaniel Hackett, because everyone wants to know like which part of this was their doing or which part was Rodgers doing. So I'm excited to take him from Green Bay, but I am surprised that he wanted to come to a rival. considering our history together. But I'm excited from the things that he says. He talks about footwork, mechanics, and if, like you just said, the players have such high expectations of him, then it ought to bode well for us. So I'm very much looking forward to see what he can do.
Yeah, and here's Barlissimo again, bringing it with the comments, filling us in even. First time in the NFL, he's an OC. He was an offensive coordinator at Mississippi State. That's absolutely right. I believe he also did some things at his university, D2 school in Pennsylvania, Indiana University of Pennsylvania, as an OC, or maybe it was quarterbacks coach as well. So he's certainly working his way up. And this is a guy that was thought so much of in Green Bay. I believe this, when LaFleur was hired there, if I'm not mistaken, it was his second stint in Green Bay. So, I think that more so tells you about the Aaron Rodgers effect and his relationship with him more so than anything as well. He also mentions he likes the hire of Janako, their new quarterbacks coach, and then Chris Morgan, the offensive line coach who they brought over from the Atlanta Falcons. He was a part of their Super Bowl run a few years ago. And, I got to say, although a lot of these names aren't, very well known just yet, it does excite me, the fact that we might just get one of those Kyle Shanahan type offenses here in Chicago. And obviously, if you know anything about Justin Fields and the athleticism that he has, and really anything about his career at Ohio State, that possibility has to excite you.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And we just see the success that Justin Fields just teased us with, even with the coordinators and staff that we had this year, just in the season. So I'm excited to see what will happen when Justin Fields has a full off season to kind of do this work, learn the playbook, now that stuff is all figured out. And hopefully we can get him some help on offense. So I'm excited to see where it goes.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it also speaks volumes that after the Ryan Poles and Matt Eberflus press conference, who met the media? Of course, it was George McCaskey. But after that, it was Justin Fields. In years past, I don't recall seeing that. I think that's pretty rare. That's not something very common that you see in the NFL, whether it's the Chicago Bears or any other franchise. Looking here in Chicago, though, when Matt Nagy was hired, you didn't have Mitch Trubisky meet with the media. And obviously we all knew Matt Nagy was brought here to get Mitch Trubisky to that next level, to show us why he was selected number 2 overall. Obviously that didn't work out. And needless to say, I think that speaks volumes, though. I mean, how much they've invested in Justin Fields, and how much they are invested in Justin Fields and his future. So I know a lot of people are kind of upset that the Bears never supposedly reached out to Jim Harbaugh or a flashy name like that. But I think this is exactly what the Bears need. They don't need any more flash. They need a guy like Eberflus who I'm really excited. He's going to bring back the 4-3 model. Obviously, not that matters, because you change formations and you change defenses so much in the NFL nowadays. But we'll start seeing Robert Quinn and Khalil Mack get back to their 4-3 ways. And obviously, they have a lot of experience in doing that in the past. Looking at this team, though, Travis, and looking at some of the pending free agents from this offseason, I mean, you look at wide receiver, there's only one wide receiver right now on the Chicago Bears, and that's Darnell Mooney. So that's obviously going to be a position that they're going to address quite a bit in free agency, in the NFL draft as well. But who should they retain? One of those guys, obviously, Allen Robinson. I think he's good as gone, and I think a lot of people are A-okay with that. His time here kind of came to an ugly ending, and I don't think it was all his fault, but there's some replays you could go back and look and ask yourself, is he giving it 100%? Is he all the way there? And I'm not sure he was at all times, but when he is bought in, you're getting a solidified number one wide receiver, in my opinion. So it'll be interesting to see where he ends up going. I do not anticipate him coming back with the Chicago Bears, but there's some big time pending free agents that are on this team that I would like to see back, that I think there has to be interest in them coming back. And the first two that come to my mind are James Daniels on the offensive line, and then on the defensive line, Bilal Nichols. I'd like to say Akeem Hicks, but I think with age and his injury issues the last few years now, I think that boat has probably sailed. And I know that marriage has kind of come to an ugly ending the last month or so of the season. But it's a new regime, so who knows what the interest might be there and if that relationship could come together again. But Bilal Nichols and James Daniels are two guys that I think it'll be pretty wise for the Bears to retain this offseason.
Absolutely. I mean, and talk about homegrown talent. It's nice to be able to draft players that we actually trained and they actually produced in the NFL. But I think one of the things that they said in the press conferences is they want to have a younger movement. So that bodes well to just guys like Danny Trevathan, who had his injury history and those things going on. I think that he should go. Akeem Hicks, I love the effort and the intensity that he brings. He truly embodies what it means to be a literal bear because he's just so big and just dominates the area. But his injury history is a concern. So I think that we should kind of go younger in there. But I agree with James Daniels and Bilal Nichols. Marquise Goodwin, I don't know if he's a free agent, but if he is, he's a guy that maybe I'm like on the fence with. I don't know if it's something that he just didn't retain the playbook or what's going on. But I just want to kind of figure out what we can kind of do with what we have.
I think, and I bring this comment up, yeah, Marquise Goodwin and Damiere Byrd are both free agents. If I had to go one way or the other, I think I'd lean on Damiere Byrd. He's a younger guy, younger player, and I thought he flashed more so than Marquise Goodwin. I thought Goodwin was a bit of a disappointment this year. I know he was working in the summer with Justin Fields, and I thought that there would be some type of connection there possibly, but it just never seemed to really work out. And again, you could probably connect the dots, and maybe he was in Nagy's doghouse from the start of the year. I know he had some questionable comments week one. I forget exactly what they were, but it was week one against the Rams where he said some things that didn't really go over too well, it seemed like, with the coaching staff. So maybe he found his way in the doghouse. But yeah, I mean, this is going to be a totally different looking team from last season to this coming season. So a lot will be done, and Ryan Poles, and Matt Eberflus have their work cut out for them, no doubt about it. Moving forward, though, Travis, looking at another organization that has been struggling, believe it or not, more than the Chicago Bears have the past 10 years or so, and that's the Jacksonville Jaguars. They made it official. They hired Doug Peterson. Can he bring the Jaguars back to relevancy? Is this the right move to get the most out of former number one overall pick Trevor Lawrence? All signs pointed to Byron Leftwich being the next Jaguars head coach. I was rooting for that. I thought that would have been a fantastic story, and I do think Leftwich will be a great head coach one day. I don't know if it's coming this offseason or not, though. I thought that this was going to be the spot for him. He didn't want to work with their GM, Trent Baalke, and apparently Shad Khan, the owner of the Jaguars, didn't want to get rid of Trent Baalke. So here they are. They go out and they hire Doug Peterson, which I think will still work out for the Jacksonville Jaguars. And like Chicago, this move, you're looking right at the quarterback position, and Trevor Lawrence is somebody that has been connected with Justin Fields and Trevor Lawrence. They've been connected since their high school days. They've been 1-2 all basically their entire career. Can Doug Peterson, or will Doug Peterson do similar things that like he did in the past with Carson Wentz? I mean, I know Carson Wentz isn't really a highly heralded quarterback, highly thought of quarterback nowadays. But if you remember that 2017 season before he tore his ACL, the year that they actually went to the Super Bowl with Nick Foles, first 10, 11 games of that season, They were led by Carson Wentz, and if you ask me, he was probably the most valuable player in the NFL before he went down with injury. Are we expecting Doug Peterson to turn Trevor Lawrence around this season? Will it take some time? What are you expecting from this Doug Peterson hire in terms of what it means for Trevor Lawrence and really what it means for the franchise in general?
I think honestly it can be truly special for Trevor Lawrence. Going back to the types of head coaches they could have hired, it could have been far worse. I also wish Leftwich would have been there. It would have been a great pairing. But I think that people seem to forget that even if he didn't directly have a say or an impact on the whole Carson Wentz rising to stardom kind of thing, he was the head coach. He managed it. And then when Carson Wentz was not doing well, when he got hurt, Nick Foles came in, and with him still being the coach, they were able to still win the Super Bowl riding on Nick Foles' coattails. And it was the first Super Bowl maybe ever for them.
Yeah, ever, yeah.
First one ever. So it goes to show that Doug Peterson actually knows how to coach up a quarterback. And I think that Trevor Lawrence has some more athleticism to him. Maybe not to the degree that Carson has had when he first came out, but he can be a truly special player with the weapons he has.
Yeah, I mean, Trevor Lawrence has been talked about since, going back to his days of high school, how he's going to be the next great one. And obviously he reached he reached those expectations in college at Clemson, making it to the college football playoffs every year that he was there. But will he live up to the expectations? I'm not so sure. I mean, I think he's got like those Peyton Manning, even Andrew Luck type expectations where you think he's already a Hall of Famer, or he should be a Hall of Famer, is kind of what the expectation feels like for Trevor Lawrence. I think a lot of people might be backtracking that after his first year in the league, but I mean, there's still a lot of time for Trevor Lawrence and what he walked into with the Urban Meyer-led Jacksonville Jaguars. I think that the Doug Peterson-led Jaguars are going to have a much different feel to them, and I do think he will bring the Jaguars back to relevancy. Does that mean the playoffs in year one? No, not necessarily, but I mean, there were a lot of games where, you could just tell from the second snap of the game, it just didn't seem like that team was really ever bought into what Urban Meyer was bringing and what he was preaching to that team. So in the very least, you're going to have a team that believes in their head coach and a team that wants to play for their head coach. I mean, Doug Peterson, a former NFL quarterback himself, so I'm sure he's going to get along just fine with those players in that locker room. And again, he's got a big task in bringing Trevor Lawrence to stardom. But as we've seen in the past, I mean, I think Trevor Lawrence is going to be just fine. I think he'll be just fine. And it's more so the Trent Baalke, the GM, Shad Khan's going to let them do their jobs. That's going to be an interesting development to see how this relationship works out, because if there's anything about Trent Baalke, I don't think he even deserves to be an NFL GM. So I don't blame Byron Leftwich at all for not wanting to take that job if Baalke was still going to be there. You look at his track record. I mean, going back to his days in San Francisco, he's the reason why things spoiled so quickly. 4 or 5 years with Jim Harbaugh. After Jim Harbaugh brought them to 3 straight NFC championship games, but that's neither here nor there. That's going to be an interesting development, though, how that relationship goes on over time. One last topic before we wrap things up, Travis. Jimmy Garoppolo, Rolling Meadows, Illinois native, former Eastern Illinois quarterback. I usually do root hard for these guys, and at one point I did root for Jimmy G, but not so much anymore. I think he's kind of been a disappointment quarterback. I would go as far as saying I don't even think he's a very average quarterback.
Wow.
I don't think he's average. I think he's 19, 20, 21 in that range. Mm-hmm. But anyways, looks like the 49ers are going to be looking to trade him this offseason, to no surprise at all, after investing what they did in Trey Lance last year. I believe it was like 3 total first-round picks that they had to give up to move up to grab Trey Lance. So this is no surprise at all. Which teams, in your opinion, should be interested in one Jimmy Garoppolo? Who will he be an upgrade for in the National Football League?
I can only think of one place that would be, maybe two places. Sorry, I lied. Two places that would be perfect for Jimmy G. One is the Pittsburgh Steelers with Mike Tomlin. Mike Tomlin is a veteran coach. He already has the weapons there. It's like a plug and play. Jimmy G comes there, and you have weapons to throw to and an awesome team to kind of help support you. So that would be a great option. The other option I have is are the Washington Commanders are a perfect team. You have also a veteran coach in Ron Rivera, who loves to have a quarterback who knows what they're doing.
Is that much of an upgrade, though?
It
Garoppolo
is.
and Heineke?
Absolutely it is. Absolutely. Because Heineke has played some good games, and he's been in the playoffs, but Jimmy G has the playoff experience. And then with some of the weapons that Washington Commanders have, I think it'd be a good fit. He can manage the game and do what he can and have Washington be in contention.
I'm going to throw one team at you that I think would be an interesting one. And I don't know if this is the aspiring journalist or media person in me that would love to see this. How about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers? How about he takes over for Brady yet again? Remember when Brady was suspended for those 4 games because he wanted to go out and deflate some footballs? Jimmy Garoppolo took over, and that's kind of when Jimmy Palooza first started. And we actually seen Jacoby Brissett as well because Jimmy got hurt. But I think that would be an interesting situation. I mean, Tom Brady retires. They got Blaine Gabbert, your boy Blaine Gabbert. They got Kyle Trask, who they did invest in a second-round pick in last year. So that'll be an interesting situation. But I think Jimmy Garoppolo in Tampa Bay, if they want more of a sure thing, I think that they could go that route if they don't necessarily think Kyle Trask is ready just yet. We know what Blaine Gabbert is. I'm sorry. I know you're loyal to your Mizzou allegiances, and I respect it. But we know what Blaine Gabbert is, and we've seen that. We've seen him as a starting quarterback in the league before in Jacksonville and, of course, in San Francisco. I think Bruce Arians would probably have a heart attack if Blaine Gabbert is his starting quarterback. But if they want more of a sure thing, like I said, it's not that I don't think Jimmy Garoppolo isn't a starting quarterback in this league. He absolutely is. I just think he might be a tad overrated, and maybe he's certainly not worth what the contract that he's currently under says he is. But I think that would be an interesting location. Yeah, Pittsburgh was the first team to pop in my head as well. I'm curious if they're going to go and find a quarterback in the draft. I know Mike Tomlin is apparently really a big fan of Malik Willis, the quarterback out of Liberty, who is an athletic freak. So it'll be interesting to see where he might land. But yeah, I think, Tampa Bay, Pittsburgh. I'm not really sure what to think of Washington if they're going to be in the market of adding another quarterback or trading for a quarterback. Obviously, if anything's done, it's going to have to be via trade. Probably won't have to give up too much because, like I said, the entire league knows that the 49ers are going to be going with Trey Lance and not Jimmy Garoppolo this offseason. And if the 49ers want to keep Garoppolo as a backup, by all means, but you're not paying a backup the type of money that he's due next season. But so yeah, Washington, Pittsburgh, Tampa Bay. We'll see what's going on with Detroit. Will Jared Goff be there for another year? It seems like him and Dan Quinn have this, or not Dan Quinn, but Dan Campbell. It seems like him and Dan Campbell have this love-hate relationship, so we'll see what happens there. But I mean, there's going to be some interest there, and I'm sure you won't have to give up too much for Jimmy Garoppolo, seeing as what his contract is looking like in the past. Maybe a 5th, 6th round pick. We'll see. Maybe I'm sure it'll look more so like a Brock Osweiler deal when he got traded to Cleveland. I don't think you'll have to give up a 2nd round pick to acquire him, though. But anyways, Travis, we'll wrap this up here, man. I really do appreciate you hopping on here, talking some NFL football, getting the audience to know you a little bit as well. We'll definitely have to do this again more often. And next time, we'll definitely bring your brother Tabario in as well, host of Not Your Average Tea Time, who, of course, we get together quite often and talk some NFL football over there. I usually do this with all my guests. I don't know if you have anything to plug, Travis, but any final words out there for the people?
Well, I just got to say that I really liked a quote that Ryan Poles said, and I really resonated with it. Hopefully it's true, because if it is true, it would be epic. It also has a very Game of Thrones kind of vibe. I don't know if that resonates with you or anyone in the crowd, but him just saying that we plan to take the North and never give it back. And I guess I'll leave it on that. We're going to take the
He had
North.
to know. He had to know what he was saying, right? He had to know that was going to give Game of Thrones vibes off, right?
He had to know. He had to know.
One more thing, and then we'll end this show. Ryan Poles, something else that really caught my eyes, and it was really the number one thing after that really caught my attention in the press conference was when I think it was Mark Potash of the Chicago Sun-Times asked him if you had it basically asked him, were you did you have to decide, did Bears ownership give you three names and say you have to choose between Dan Quinn, Matt Eberflus, or Jim Caldwell, or were those your candidates? Is this truly your hire, Matt Eberflus? And, were you given freedom to bring in any other interviews or anything like that is basically what the question was. And he said, yeah, I was given, full access to whoever I wanted to speak to, whoever I wanted to interview, whoever I wanted to hire. He said, and quite simply, there's a little pause, and then he looks at Matt Eberflus. He goes, I found him. That's my guy. So I think that gave us a vote of confidence in saying that, the Bears ownership, as much as we give them shit about having their hands in the cookie jar, when you got the owner, George McCaskey, openly saying multiple times after in the press conference when they fired Nagy and Pace, saying, I'm not a football guy, I'm a fan, but it always seems like they have their hands in the cookie jar. That gave me some confidence. Like, all right, this is Ryan Poles' show. This is truly Ryan Poles' show. This is his hire. This is his guy. Unlike Ryan Pace, where the story's out there, he didn't want to hire John Fox. The Bears made him ownership, and the consultant that they brought in that year made him hire John Fox. So this has a different feel to it. This has a different vibe to it, and I know some fans are still unsure about how they should feel about this, which rightfully so. But I do think that this is a step in the right direction for the Chicago Bears. But that'll do it for today's show. Travis, again, thank you very much for joining. We'll have to do this again more often. Definitely appreciate your insight. A lot of fun talking football as always. And the people out there tuning in, big time thank you to, of course, Bearlissimo for participating in the comments, and everybody else who tuned in. Really appreciate it. Be sure to follow the show and follow me on Twitter at Chris Shanafelt. And we are actually on again tomorrow. I'll be joined by former Cincinnati Bengals linebacker Jason DeMonch, Southern Illinois alum. Spent 2-3 years with the Cincinnati Bengals. We'll be talking about his playing days, and then looking forward to this Cincinnati Bengals team who is taking on the LA Rams at SoFi Stadium a week from today in Super Bowl 56. Travis, thank you very much, man. Have a good rest of your day.
Thanks for having me, man.
And again, thanks everybody for tuning in.